Something unexpected happened in New York City, and one of daytime television's biggest stars had a front row seat to all of it. Mark Consuelos, husband, co-host, and diehard New Yorker, stepped onto the Live with Kelly and Mark set and gave fans a reaction that nobody saw coming. Between a gut-wrenching Knicks playoff loss, police shutting down the entire city for a presidential visit, and an atmosphere so charged you could almost feel it through the screen, Mark had just 3 words to sum the whole night up. The vibe was off, and fans, they immediately started reacting. But before we get into all of that, let's set the scene, because this story is so much more layered than it first appears. If you follow daytime television at all, you already know that Live with Kelly and Mark is one of the most beloved morning talk shows in America. It's been a fixture in American homes for decades, first with Regis, then with a long rotating roster of co-hosts. But when Mark Consuelos stepped in full-time alongside his wife Kelly Ripa, something clicked in a way that felt genuinely electric. These two aren't just television personalities. They're a real couple. A couple who has been together for nearly 3 decades, raised a family in New York City, and built a career that intertwines their personal life with their professional one in a way that's both rare and refreshing. Audiences don't just tune in for the celebrity interviews or the games and giveaways. They tune in because Kelly and Mark feel like real people having real conversations. And on this particular morning, Mark had a very real conversation about a very wild night in New York City. To understand why this moment resonated so deeply with fans, you have to understand who Mark Consuelos is beyond the television set. Born in Zaragoza, Spain, and raised in the United States, Mark built his career through a combination of acting, producing, and eventually becoming one half of what many consider the gold standard of celebrity couples in Hollywood. His role on All My Children is where his story with Kelly began. A soap opera romance that turned into the real thing, a surprise elopement in Las Vegas in 1996 that shocked the entertainment world, and a partnership that has only grown stronger with time. But Mark is also just a guy from New York. He loves sports. He's passionate about his city. He bleeds the energy of the 5 boroughs in a way that feels authentic and unperformed. So when something major goes down in New York, whether it's a landmark sporting event or a full-scale city disruption, Mark feels it personally. And this particular night had everything. It started, as so many dramatic New York nights do, with basketball. The New York Knicks, a team with one of the most passionate and loyal fan bases in all of professional sports, were in the thick of a high-stakes playoff run. For Knicks fans, every single game carries the weight of decades of heartbreak, hope, resilience, and an almost stubborn refusal to give up on a team that has, let's be honest, put them through the emotional ringer more times than they can count. Mark, like so many New Yorkers, was locked in. And for those watching closely, you could tell this one meant something. But then the Knicks lost, and that alone would have been enough to put a damper on the evening. But New York City had another layer of disruption ready to go. President Donald Trump was in the city, and as happens whenever a sitting president travels through one of the most densely populated urban centers in the world, the security operation was massive. Streets were closed. Traffic was rerouted. The NYPD and Secret Service had essentially drawn an invisible perimeter around significant portions of Midtown Manhattan. For everyday New Yorkers, and for one very famous co-host trying to navigate his evening, it meant the city that never sleeps had, for a few hours, been told to hold very still. When Mark brought it up on Live with Kelly and Mark, the response from the studio audience was immediate. There was laughter. There was recognition. There was that collective exhale that New Yorkers share when someone finally puts words to the shared experience of trying to exist in the city during a major disruption. Mark described the atmosphere with characteristic candor. The Knicks' loss had already set a certain emotional tone. That particular brand of New York sports grief that is both deeply personal and utterly communal. And then layering on top of that the logistical and emotional weight of an entire city being rerouted and reconfigured around a presidential security detail. It added up to something that was hard to define, but immediately recognizable to anyone who has spent time in New York. The vibe was off, he said. And honestly, sometimes the most honest takes are the simplest ones. Kelly, for her part, responded with the kind of warm, knowing energy that has made the two of them such a compelling on-screen duo. She understood exactly what he meant, and she reflected it back to him and to the audience in a way that transformed a personal anecdote into a shared cultural moment. But that wasn't the end of the story. Fans immediately started reacting online, and the clip began making the rounds across social media platforms. What struck people wasn't just the humor or the relatability of Mark's comment, it was the authenticity behind it. Here's a man who lives in New York, who loves the Knicks, who navigates the same city as millions of everyday people, and who was willing to get on national television and just be honest about how a rough night felt. That kind of transparency is rarer than it sounds in celebrity culture. There's often a carefully managed distance between public figures and genuine emotional disclosure, even on a light topic like a sports loss or a traffic-filled evening. But Mark Consuelos has never really operated that way. He's known for being direct, a little unfiltered, and willing to say the thing that everyone in the room is already thinking. And social media rewarded him for it. Comments and posts poured in from Knicks fans commiserating, from New Yorkers who had experienced the same disrupted evening, and from Live with Kelly and Mark viewers who have come to expect exactly this kind of genuine, personality-driven commentary from the show's co-hosts. The clip spread. The conversation grew. And once again, Mark and Kelly found themselves at the center of a pop culture moment that they hadn't manufactured or engineered. It had simply emerged from being real. There's a deeper thread running through this whole story, and it's worth pausing on for a moment. Mark Consuelos is, at his core, a person who cares. About his team, about his city, about the people who share his experience of living and working in one of the most intense urban environments on Earth. And he's in a career, in a relationship that asks him to bring that care to the surface every single morning in front of millions of people without pretense. That's not easy. Anyone who has watched Live with Kelly and Mark with any regularity knows that the chemistry between these two co-hosts is not manufactured. It's not a product of good producers and a tight format, though both of those things certainly help. It's the product of nearly 30 years of a real relationship, of two people who genuinely like and admire each other, and who have found a way to translate that into television that connects with audiences on a human level. When Mark says the vibe was off, he's not just talking about basketball and traffic. He's talking about the specific emotional texture of a New York City night gone sideways, a feeling that anyone who has ever been emotionally invested in something and then had the world pile on around them can recognize and relate to. And somehow, a brief moment on a morning talk show managed to capture all of that. Moments like this are exactly why Live with Kelly and Mark continues to be a cultural institution rather than just a daytime talk show. In a television landscape that has changed dramatically over the past decade, where streaming has fragmented audiences, where morning programming competes with podcasts and social media and 1,000 other forms of content, Live has maintained its relevance by doing something that sounds simple, but is surprisingly difficult to execute. It keeps showing up as itself. Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos are not characters. They're not performing a version of a celebrity couple for the cameras. They are who they are, flawed, funny, genuine, opinionated, and deeply embedded in the city and culture that surrounds them. And that authenticity is what keeps audiences coming back morning after morning. Mark's Knicks comment, his frustration with the city disruption, his honest 3-word summary of a chaotic evening, all of it feeds into the larger portrait of who he is as a co-host, as a public figure, and as a New Yorker. It's a portrait that fans have been building for years, and moments like this one add texture and depth to it in ways that no carefully crafted press release ever could. At the end of the day, this story is about something pretty simple and profoundly relatable. It's about a night that didn't go the way you wanted it to. It's about watching your team lose when you needed them to win. It's about your city feeling unfamiliar and disrupted on a night when you just wanted things to feel normal. And it's about finding the exact right words to describe all of that in a way that makes people laugh, nod, and feel a little less alone in their own chaotic evenings. The vibe was off. Mark Consuelos said it. New Yorkers felt it. And for a moment, a morning talk show became a mirror, reflecting back a shared experience with honesty, humor, and the kind of warmth that only comes from people who are genuinely, authentically themselves. That's the Kelly and Mark effect. And it doesn't show any signs of slowing down. So here's what we want to know. Are you a Knicks fan? Have you ever been caught in a full city shutdown during a major event? And do you think Mark and Kelly are the most authentic couple on daytime television right now? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you enjoyed this celebrity update, subscribe for more entertainment news and Hollywood stories. We'll see you in the next one.